Yeah, and there was some information that we learned this afternoon. Like the point of
Joyce!
Then we kind of went down to
yeah, he made it sound like
Sure, yeah, just let me know what you want. I'll just stay up. Yeah, excited about it.
Yeah, that was our thing.
No one, I don't think anyone ever said they were going to set up a mic and be like, oh, I'll do this. I mean, most of the
They claim they're the center of the universe there, but I have to say that's not true. I mean, almost the truth. I was just like,
Hi.
Yeah, ours was at the very end.
Yes.
Oh, well. Yeah. Yeah, that's me.
Actually, that's not today was a good day. Really? So that's oh. Yeah. Oh, okay. Like, that's oh, yeah. I hope they run slides.
How you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm Leander James from the law firm of James and Weeks, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I'm a victim's rights attorney. For the past few years, I've had the privilege and the honor to advise pro bono representation for this criminal case of Karen Jeremy Scott. Your loving mother and stepfather, Father Mike. I will be giving a statement of gratitude today for my Lord. 962 days ago, we lost our man, our kind, loving, gracious, and caring daughter full of purpose and promise. We are grateful for the gift of her life, and we have grieved the loss of that life during each of these 962 days. We love you, Maddie, and we miss you. We are grateful for the gift of the young, vivacious, promising lives of Guily, Xana, and Ethan. And we deeply, deeply mourn their senseless loss. We remain in solidarity with their families and friends. And we continue to shower them with our prayers and support. We are grateful for their prayers, love, and support they have given us and helped us sustain us during our crisis time. We are grateful to the prosecutor, Bill Thompson, and his dedicated and caring team, including victim coordinators in the state, who have helped guide us through the sometimes confusing and disorienting legal process. Thank you for all your dedicated, diligent, and tireless commitment to justice and the successful outcome reached today. We support the plea agreement 100%. While we know there are some who do not support it, we ask that they respect our belief that this is the best outcome possible for victims, their families, and the state of Idaho. We extend our deep gratitude to the many law enforcement officers and staff who worked tirelessly to obtain the critical evidence that brought justice today, including the Moscow Police Department, the FBI, the Idaho State Patrol, and the Lake County Sheriff's Department. We are deeply grateful to Judge Hitler, Judge John Judge before him. We thank you for your diligence, thoughtfulness, and judicial guidance. We appreciate the difficult work you have done to balance the rights of all involved and to uphold the rule of law. You have had our prayers and support throughout this case. We send our love and gratitude to the many family and friends who have supported us, cared for us, and helped us to heal our open emotional wounds. To the good people of North Idaho, who have showered us with kindness and support, we thank you. We also mourn today with you the recent tragic and senseless loss of two brave North Idaho firefighters. We extend our prayers and support to their families. You are not alone. We understand your pain. It's an almost unbearable journey, but you are not alone. And there is hope, and there is healing. We thank those in the press who have respected our privacy and the grieving process, and the privacy and grieving process of the families of Guily, Xana, and to others in the press, we just urge you to do the same. We thank the many people across our nation and beyond who have reached out to us, prayed for us, and extended their kindness. You too have helped us in our journey to healing. We now embark on a new path. We turn from tragedy and mourning. We turn from darkness and uncertainty of the legal process to the light of the future. We have closure. We embark on a path of hope and healing. We invite all of those who have mourned with us to join us, and we wish you well. Thank you. I will now share a few words of my own. Over the past 2 years, I've been amazed and humbled by Karen and Scott's strength, endurance, and faith. They have uplifted me and so many. They founded a nonprofit to help others in the name of Maddie. They have been a beacon of hope amidst a dark and tragic time. To those young and bright attorneys out there looking for purpose and meaning in your profession, I invite you to join the effort of crime victim attorneys to bring this is not the end of violence. This case is not the end of lawlessness. We need your help to bring hope and healing to the innocent caught in the crossfire of life. Thank you all.
Karen and Scott want to share a memory.
Sir, could you just say your name one more time, sir?
Leander James, L-A-N-D-E-R, last name.
Thank you, sir.
Get you something? You want to go with us, or you want to bring you back something? We're just going to pass through. You're here. I think it's.
Oh no, we'll put it there. Yeah.
You can put it under the tent.
But they said apologies, Judge the 23rd, and if the
We want to put it
Please stop the choice. I think they're going to meet us over there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Do you want extra hands, Doug?
Oh, I'm
also,
gonna tear this down.
I'm not gonna sing one of the steps. They're just gonna be like, oh, Eric, by the way, boy.
We might.
You get this guy then.
One would definitely be top.
The other family?
Thank you.
They might know.
I think people are starting to wrap up here. I don't think anyone's doing it. So we can just wrap up.
Always nice to meet you.
All this black is not good.
They're an hour into their drive, which is like, I'm pretty sure.
Is there an hour into the drive to Grease Lake?
Oh, this is here. Is that yours?
Well, I mean, there's always going to be a couple from the police station.
Cool guy?
Well, if we're going here, I can stick it. I wish I could. So the pounded the pavement recorder right there. That was all up in the. I heard it.
First, we're going to tell you. In some So we're going to start with this. Judge criticized the attempts to call right against the as late as last night, the after that, the proceedings began. Bryan Kohberger at the meeting was considered to stop the requirement of push the appeal. In fact, the judge asked him that he would take every single was given by his defense team. Today we heard his voice for the first time admitting guilt. Let's listen.
Yes.
Bryan Kohberger pleaded guilty to all four of those crimes. The prosecutor laid out in great detail Now we're going to take about after effects, the most seriously emotionally outspoken thing I would say about all the family was father side themselves.
Sorry, we need
That was essentially the state that prosecutes this case.
I have been using the GLP-1 injections through hers for 4 months. I have lost 30 pounds.
Hers has changed my life. They were there for me.
I didn't have that food noise in the back of my head anymore. I feel much more comfortable in myself now.
I have lost 40 pounds. It is never too late to make a change.
I have lost 29 pounds. I fell back in love with myself. See if GLP-1s are right for you. Start today at forhers.com.
We are interrupting your programming today to bring you breaking news. The man accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students is back in court this morning and is expected to take a deal to plead guilty.
Bryan Kohberger accused of killing Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle in their off-campus home on King Road in November of 2022.
He is facing 4 first-degree murder charges as well as a burglary charge.
Under the terms of this agreement, Bryan Kohberger is expected to plead guilty to all 4 murder charges. He will waive his right to appeal. That means he will not have the opportunity to raise any legal complaints or county prosecutors. We're seeking the death penalty in this case, as you know. That would no longer be on the table if this plea agreement is accepted by the court, and the trial will be canceled.
Now, some family members of the victims arrived to court just about an hour ago. We're just about 15 minutes away from the hearing starting right now. The Chapin family is there. You can see the Gonzalez family arriving to court right there. Steve Gonzalez, Kaylee's dad, walked back to the courthouse, then talking to reporters. Take a listen.
He needs to protect those other surviving victims and make this person say that they had nothing to do with it. He did it solely. He did it all on his own, and nobody else was responsible. And then we won't keep having these supporters always saying that he got set up. We know what he's planning on doing. Somebody died, a vet died, and he's going to try to say that, put the blame on that person. So he's not going to take accountability.
Now, after news of the plea deal, some of the victims' families released statements sharing how they feel about this. The family of Kaylee Gonzalez posted on social media yesterday saying, quote, "We will not stop fighting for the life that was stolen unjustly," end quote.
They went on to say they're asking for a full confession, full accountability, location of the murder weapon, confirmation that the defendant acted alone, and also the true facts of what happened that night. You heard Stephen Gonzalez talking just there about why he's dissatisfied with this deal.
And by the way, he says he is not going to go in the courtroom this morning. We'll see if that holds true. While Stacy Chapin, the mother of Ethan, told us their family is in Boise today. We did see them walking into the courtroom this morning, and they are in support of this plea deal.
New this morning, a statement from Maddie's father, Ben Mogen, right here, obtained by her sister station in Spokane. This horrendous crime protects the public from further harm and allows all of us who knew and loved these 4 young people the time to grieve without the anxiety of the long and gruesome trial, years of appeals, and potential for mistrials all along the way, end quote. Have not heard any comment from Xana Kernodle's family yet.
They have been very private throughout this whole process. There is a lot of media outside the Ada County Courthouse. We showed that to you this morning. Media outlets from all over the world. They've been set up since very early this morning. Andrea Dearden live at the Ada County Courthouse right now. Andrea, tell us what you're seeing there. Set the scene for us.
Absolutely. Well, Maggie, Justin, there are dozens of media outlets here lining up the front of the courthouse, essentially both sides, filling the courthouse, even people stationed across the street in order to get a firsthand look at what is happening inside these doors, inside the courtroom. And as you said, that's expected, that hearing expected to start in about 15 minutes. People are very anxious to hear, of course. This has been a story that has gotten national attention, international attention, and so media, but also people in the community just being very interested in what is happening. They want to know what will be said today. They are very anxious to hear what Bryan Kohberger will be asked today, how he will answer. This will be one of the first times that we've been able to get any sort of response from the defendant. We know that we're expecting the judge to ask. Judge Stephen Hippler is the presiding judge here. We're expecting him to ask the defendant if He is doing this, if this plea agreement is something he has agreed to voluntarily, he'll also want to make sure that he understands exactly the terms and conditions to which he is agreeing. That is a big piece of a judge accepting the plea agreement. Yesterday, I sat down with Boise attorney Tara Malik to talk about some of the things. We talked about the victims' responses. That is one element that prosecutors certainly consider when they are looking at whether or not to offer a defendant a plea agreement. But as Tara told us, there are lots of other things to take into consideration as well. This is not something that they take lightly.
So I'm sure that both sides really sat with the information that they had and assessed, what their trial strategies were going to be and what the risks were going to be if they proceeded forward. If there are victims involved, like there are in this case, what the victims' desires are and what their hopes are. And then finally, you're looking at what the reality of the situation is. What's your best case scenario if you go all the way through trial? Do you think that you're going to prevail? If you prevail, what happens after that? Is there a likelihood that there will be appeals? And most importantly, is there a plea arrangement that we can come to and a sentence we can come to where we really think that justice is being served and we're holding someone accountable for wrongdoing?
What we believe will be presented tomorrow at that hearing is guilty on all counts. So in that case, and it is the best case scenario, we're not dropping any charges, they aren't amending any charges, but full conviction on all four of these. Is that really the best case scenario for prosecutors?
If it's going to be a guilty plea to all four counts, to the 4 counts of murder, the 1 count of burglary, and we're talking about life sentences, no possibility of parole, consecutive life sentences, meaning stacked on top of each other, not happening at the same time, that's a good outcome because you are avoiding the uncertainties of trial. You're avoiding the costs of trial potentially.
You talked about the families being consulted or at least taking into consideration what they may want or their desires. Here we have multiple victims, perhaps families likely that feel differently, have different opinions. So how does that weigh on defense attorneys and prosecutors?
Well, they have to be consulted and kept in the loop. They have victims' rights. They have statutory rights there. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the prosecutors don't represent a single family or a single victim. They represent the state. And so they have to do what is in the best interest of all in this scenario.
Judge Hippler is the presiding judge in this case. He will hear this agreement and does play a role, meaning that he has to accept it. But it's a limited role. So what will he be weighing and what does he really have to decide when it comes down to whether or not to accept this plea agreement?
What I anticipate happening tomorrow at tomorrow's hearing is called a plea colloquy with the defendant. And what that means is he's going to make sure that if a plea is indeed being entered, that it's being done knowingly, voluntarily, that the defendant understands the charges against him, understands the plea agreement in its entirety before accepting that he's not being coerced or forced into making that plea. It's going to be even more imperative that the judge really gets to the heart of making sure that this defendant understands the rights that he is waiving.
That is probably the biggest piece of this plea agreement, or the one that caught my eye, is that he will waive, if what we understand to be true, that he would waive all rights to future appeals. How significant is that and how unusual is it?
Well, it's very significant, especially in this type of case where we were looking at potentially a death penalty case. Death penalty cases, as most people are probably aware, there are lengthy appeals. You could be wrapped up in appeals for decades. There are rights, appeal rights that an accused has. And so it's a significant condition, if it indeed is part of this plea arrangement or agreement, that there's a waiver of those rights. That's a lot of time. It's a lot of cost. It's a lot of uncertainty that goes entirely away.
a lot of uncertainty that goes away, and I believe that's exactly what we heard from the Mogen family in their statement about having that certainty of convictions and knowing that they will not have to face likely years, decades even, which is what we see oftentimes in capital cases, and that's exactly what this would have been if it had gone to trial. The prosecutors were seeking the death penalty. So had this been a capital case, we could have expected years and years, again, even decades of appeals, and I think that is certainly one of the things that you heard from the family saying that that is one of the reasons they support this plea agreement. Now, one of the things to listen for today will be whether or not this is a binding agreement or a non-binding agreement. A binding agreement means that the judge, the court, is bound to hold to this agreement, meaning he will have no discretion when it comes to sentencing. He will agree to follow the recommendations, which would be those 4 consecutive life sentences. You heard Tara say, if. We are still waiting to hear it outlined in court today. We have seen those 3 conditions that you, Maggie and Justin, mentioned earlier, the life sentences, the convictions, the guilty pleas, but we don't know yet some of those very specific details. Like, will there be things in there about not speaking publicly about the case? We have had a gag order in place in this case from day one, so that is also one of the conditions that could be in this agreement. So we're going to want to listen closely to see if we hear all of the terms that are outlined.
And Andre, what's really interesting is we saw Steve Gonzalez walk out in protest. He says he's not going to go into the courtroom. One thing the Gonzalez family said last night is, at bare minimum, please require a full confession, full accountability, location of the murder weapon, confirmation the defendant acted alone, and the true facts of what happened that night. We deserve to know when the beginning of the end was for their daughter, Kaylee. I do understand these answers may not have been given through trial, but that should be the minimum price to pay for his own life. That is what the family is saying right now. What are the chances that something like that is woven into this plea agreement?
Well, I actually talked to Tara Malik specifically about that. She was quick to point out that there is no guarantee of closure in any trial. In fact, there are often times where evidence is presented and may actually cause even more questions or leave people wondering, what it really means. And so I think that idea that there will be closure, that we will get a full confession. Remember, by law, the defendant is not required to say anything. Now, he will have an opportunity during the sentencing hearing. All defendants have the opportunity to address the court, just as the victims' families will have an opportunity to address Kohberger, the defendant, also address the court, talk about, we call that a victim impact statement, talk about the impact that these crimes, these killings have had on them. Those are often very emotional. Certainly that's when we hear from the family and all of the pain and all of the suffering that they have had at the hands of this defendant because of the crimes that he will have admitted to committing. But whether or not we will ever get that full statement, that would be very, very unusual. And we have not had any reason to believe that will be part of this plea agreement that we will hear presented today.
Andrea, thank you. Now, speaking of Steve Gonzalez, we saw him walk toward the courtroom and then walk back out. And as we've talked about, this case has worldwide attention. Can you show us what is going on there outside the courtroom? Is Steve Gonzalez still there? What does the media look like as well?
I'm going to step out of the shot so that our photographer here can pan across the front of the courthouse here so you can see. I can recognize national media outlets, local media outlets from North Idaho area. Also, of course, here in the Treasure Valley, this case moved from Latah County here to Ada County in order for them to have a better chance of finding an impartial jury or having a bigger jury pool to pull from. We don't know how far into that process they had gotten. We do know that surveys or jury summons were issued in Ada County. I saw a lot of conversation online about people who had gotten that summons saying that they were going to be expected to be in court, and a lot of people wondering if that meant that they could potentially be in the pool for the Kohberger case. But we know that isn't going to happen. So if this plea agreement is accepted today, And again, Judge Hippler, really the only discretion he has here, the thing he's going to be weighing, is whether or not it is fair, whether or not the defendant is entering it into this agreement willingly, and if he knows exactly what he is agreeing to. Short of that, we would expect him to accept this agreement. Now remember, even if the agreement is set today and it is accepted and that plea is changed, that will happen today, but the sentencing wouldn't happen for a while. Again, we still have the opportunity for those victims to come in and address the court, so we would expect to see a sentencing hearing later on. It could be weeks from now, and as Tara told us yesterday, it could be several months. It's all just about when they get that scheduled.
And Andrea, we also know that the Kohberger family, Bryan Kohberger's family, is going to be in the courtroom as well today. The family did send out a statement. I'm going to read that to you. It says, in light of recent developments, the Kohbergers are asking members of the media for privacy, for respect, and responsible judgment during this time. We will continue to allow the legal process to unfold with respect to all parties and will not release any comments or take any questions. We ask that you respect our wishes during what is a difficult time for everyone affected. So the family, in terms of seeing Steve Gonsalves, we mentioned he walked out. He said he was going to stay out of the courtroom. Do you happen to see him near the courthouse moving about there?
I haven't seen him here. Of course, we will keep an eye on him. We have, our view is blocked by canopies and tents and cameras and lights and things like that, but we will certainly keep an eye. We do have several crews here. We will be following everything inside the courtroom and also what happens outside of the courtroom after this hearing concludes. We don't expect it to be a super long hearing. Really, it's a procedural hearing, so they would likely go through the agreement, have that plea colloquy, as Tara Malik talked about, having that back and forth with the defendant, those questions and answers that we would expect him to say, yes, he agrees to this, and then the hearing should conclude. Now, they may talk a little bit about scheduling at the end, but we don't expect it to be super long. Of course, we will stay here throughout its entirety. We'll bring it to you streaming live, and we will be here afterwards to talk about what happened and to kind of break down what we know.
And we appreciate that you're going to be there for us to help us do that because you know all the legalese of what's going on.
Yeah, Andrea, that really invaluable insight there. Really appreciate it. And again, we were talking about the victims' families, them there, and the fact that the Mogen and Chapin families were in support of this plea deal, the Gonsalves family, because they just wanted to know what happened that night. They very much seem to be not in support of that plea deal.
Yeah, well, Steve Gonsalves has been very vocal from the get-go. Andrea knows this from the day this happened, that he wants this person found and he wants the death penalty for this person. Obviously, the trial's not going to happen now if this all goes through today. And the family spoke with the prosecution on Friday, from what we're understanding, about the idea of a plea deal, and they said they were firmly against it. They told the prosecution that. They say by Sunday, they received an email that sent them scrambling, in quotes, and they met with, but as you all know, the plea agreement was made, and we'll see if it all moves forward as of today.
And a quick update, as you might have seen right now, it is 11:02, a couple minutes past when this hearing, we were expecting it to start, but we imagine there's a lot going on behind the scenes to get their ducks in a row right now.
Yeah, and Tara Malik, the attorney, told Andrea, and Andrea, we can bring you back in here, that really they don't have to do anything for a specific family. What they're trying to do here, the state, is do what's best for everyone involved here. And obviously, the Gonsalves family, very passionate. They have their views about what they want to see done here. And the other families may have a different view. So tell me how that all weighs in when they're considering something like a plea deal.
Right. Well, the bottom line is, remember what Tara reminded us is, and that is that the prosecution represents the state. They are not representatives of any one individual victim or any of the victims' families. They do, as victims, have rights. And so they do need to be consulted. They need to be kept involved in the process. In other words, they need to be informed when something's happening. They have a right to know when there is a hearing, regardless of what that hearing is about. But there isn't anything in statute or in ethical standards that say the victims need to vote or get to weigh in, or that they have to approve a deal or prove an agreement or any action taken by prosecution. And so that is a difficult thing. Of course, this doesn't mean that any of these feelings by any of these families are anything short of valid. You can only begin to imagine what they're experiencing and what they have experienced since that night in November of 2022. So, for us to put ourselves in that position and know what's going on in their heads and in their hearts, I wouldn't begin to do that. However, you can see here why, people grieve differently, people process differently, people have different ideas of what justice is. And it's clear here that we have at least two of the families who are saying, for them, this does bring about a sense of peace or a little bit of relief. They were not looking forward, it sounds like based on their statement, not looking forward to those weeks, months of trial. I mean, think about all of the evidence that would be presented, that they would be sitting through and listening to. We know we just went through the Vallow Daybell trials. We know we saw that evidence of that, and we heard from those families of victims how they were impacted by that, and understand that feeling from those families who say, I prefer not to do that. Remember, we also have a roommate who survived this, who was in the house at the time of the attack, likely Dylan being called to testify. That also would be a very difficult position to be in. So these families are saying, the two families we've heard from that say, yes, I support the plea agreement, that's what we're hearing them say. Now, on the other side of that, certainly also just as valid. If the Gonzalez family says for them, justice is the death penalty, justice is being able to know exactly what happened and maybe even why, they're not getting that in this case. And so for them to be upset and for them to feel like they haven't gotten enough from the court makes a lot of sense as well. Problem is that all four of those families are represented or are, a part of the exact same process. So having two very different opinions, what plays out in court is going to affect them differently as well.
Absolutely, Andrea. As you talked about, we had heard from members of the community who said, I just want what the families want, but here we have a situation where the families are disagreeing on what they want. But as you said, the prosecutors are trying to represent all of them.
Yeah.
And
that's
also,
so tough.
Also the community, the state, Kohberger would plead guilty to all 4 murder charges, waive his right to appeal. So that means that these families would not have to come back, potentially relive this waking nightmare that they've been in the past few years and give more statements during those appeals. Also, this would be life sentences without parole, so they would not be brought back for those parole hearings either. This would be something where, as best they could, and again, as Andrea said, we can only start to imagine what they're going through, but can move sort of to the next stage in the healing process, the grieving process, to not have to deal with this on a judicial level going forward.
Absolutely. And Andrea, the death penalty, as we all know, I mean, there are years of appeals. It could be 30, 40, 50 years before he would be executed. And the parents of these children, of these young people, would not live to see him executed, most likely, with the appeals process and what happens with the death penalty. Am I right?
Absolutely. And you're also assuming a conviction and assuming that the death penalty would be ruled upon, it, that the jury would agree that the death penalty was the right sentence. And we know that that also is not a guarantee. We have had dozens of defendants in Idaho over the last few decades eligible for the death penalty, but only a handful actually sentenced to death. And so again, some of those assumptions or some of those beliefs are, as Tara said multiple times, a lot of ifs. So trial is inherently risky. There are no guarantees, and I think that's really what they're trying to balance. The prosecutors are trying to balance justice. They're trying to balance victims' opinions, victims' desires, victims' wants, with also making sure that there is some accountability, enough accountability for there to feel like there is justice in this case. Now remember, defense attorneys also have to weigh this out because it is their job to represent Bryan Kohberger and do that to the best of their ability, give him, all of the rights afforded to him through our judicial process. And so they too are weighing this out. What are the risks of going to trial? What are the chances that they would be able to get an acquittal for Bryan Kohberger? Is that risk worth, not taking a plea agreement because they are clearly, agreeing that their client is guilty and will go to, or agreeing to say that he is guilty and allow him to go to prison for the rest of his natural life. So everybody kind of weighing that out, and it is really just a really large balancing act and a whole lot at stake.
Really, it is. And I think I want to bring the focus back at 11:08. We are still waiting for court to begin. It was set to begin at 11 o'clock this morning. We'll cut right to the courtroom when it starts. But I think we really want to focus on these 4 beautiful young people, these college students who we have all come to know so well over the past few years. Autopsies show that these 4 victims were all likely asleep, which just shows the heinous situation and the terrible crime that this was when they were attacked. Some had defensive wounds and each was stabbed multiple times. And online shopping records show that Kohberger months earlier had purchased a military-style knife and a sheath like the one found at the scene. That's according to court documents. Now, it's also important to note at the time of the killings here, Kohberger was a criminal justice graduate student at Washington State University. That is 9 miles west of the University of Idaho, for those of you who don't know the region very well. He was arrested in Pennsylvania, though, when he went home after the killings, about 9 miles west of the university, where his parents lived, that is, weeks later. Investigators say they matched his DNA to genetic material recovered from a knife sheath found at the crime scene as well. That is what they're claiming, and there has been a lot of controversy over that genetic genealogy. Andrea, they brought that up in court quite a bit, and that may be one of those factors that they talked about that could maybe lead to not getting a conviction. The genealogy, there's been complaints about Dateline episodes. Talk to us a bit about some of the things that were risky.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of them. That was something that the Kohberger defense team has spent hours arguing in court against being able to use some of that genealogy. They also argued things like, was it legal for investigators to pull data and pull information and pull DNA from the trash at his parents' home, at Kohberger's parents' home, things like that, without a search warrant. And so, all of those things that we have learned through these hearings, we know very limited information about all of the evidence. We do, through those hearings, have heard that there was mountains of discovery. In fact, you heard defense attorneys ask for a delay because they were having trouble getting through all of the evidence that they needed to consider and they needed to review and essentially strategize their response to. And so we do know that there was lots of evidence that we expected to be presented in trial, even though we don't know what all of that is. And quite honestly, as we've said before, we may not ever know what all of the evidence was. But that genealogy DNA, a lot of new science coming out. There's a lot of information out in several cases across the country that have relied on this genealogy data. I know that, in past, the law enforcement was able to look at about 20 different markers in a person's blood and make those matches, which would only match you to maybe 1 degree of separation, so to an immediate family member. Now I know that they have thousands of markers and can easily identify someone 4 to 5 to 6 people away in your tree. So we're talking about fifth cousins, sixth cousins. Certainly most of us couldn't even name our 5th or 6th cousin, but yet this DNA genealogy is able to identify it. Most of us haven't even met them. And so this new DNA that they are using, this new DNA examination, this type of lab work that they are doing now is impressive, but it also certainly draws into question some ethical considerations and some questions about how reliable is it, and is it enough? Is there enough certainty in that data to be able to get a conviction in court? And I think we're going to see these kinds of arguments played out in courts across the country for some time. And the evidence, the science is simply going to get better and better. And so these are questions that are probably going to weigh heavy on courts because it's going to be a really important process in a lot of these criminal investigations.
Andrea, again, appreciate that. If you're looking at the clock now, it is 11:13. So hearing was scheduled to start 13 minutes ago. We have heard they've started bringing the media in, so we are getting closer to that hearing actually started. And again, trying to focus on the victims here as much as we can.